Since winning the election, President-elect Trump has repeatedly questioned intelligence officials' assessments that Russia was behind the hacking of the DNC and Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta. But just a short time from now, the heads of national intelligence, the CIA, FBI, and the NSA are expected to detail for Mr. Trump the Russians' motives for meddling in the presidential election and also lay out who exactly delivered the stolen emails to WikiLeaks. Earlier on America's Newsroom, Congressman Peter King, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee, expressing his doubts about the timing of the intel findings.
This is old news. And at every stage of the way, they were saying that there was no indication that the Russians were favoring one candidate over another. And suddenly we start, after the election, a month after the election, we start reading in the Washington Post and the New York Times that the intelligence community has decided that the Russians were favoring Donald Trump. They never gave us any explanation for that at all, and we're still waiting. Now, hopefully we'll get it.
Meantime, the Washington Post, which Congressman King just called out, reporting that some of the intelligence intercepts show top Russian officials celebrating the news of Donald Trump's surprise victory. Says one unnamed U.S. official, quote, "The Russians felt pretty good about what happened on November 8th, and they also felt pretty good about what they did." All right, so we are awaiting all of this, and as we do, we are expecting that he will learn about motive behind this hacking in this meeting today as well.
Right, and so he just had an interview with the New York Times in which he said he thinks a lot of this is just bad feeling from Democrats, and I suggest maybe he thinks also that the intelligence community has been politicized, but because he felt that he just beat them so badly. He pointed out that he won more counties than Ronald Reagan, and he thinks Democrats are trying to delegitimize his victory by using the intelligence community's findings. But the intelligence community's findings, I think, separate from the politics, are pretty convincing.
Let's get to what he did tell the New York Times, calling it a political witch hunt. He said China relatively recently hacked 20 million government names. How come nobody even talks about that? This is a political witch hunt. Dagan.
Well, the leaks certainly indicate that. The timing of it, the fact that there are these great revelations after the election. It looks like the Obama administration and people who don't like Donald Trump are trying to take away the credibility and legitimacy of his administration before he's ever inaugurated. Again, you go to, which Congressman King talked about, the leaks in the Washington Post, the leaks in the New York Times, and the leaks to NBC News, which Donald Trump pointed out before he had ever been briefed by these intelligence officials. He needs to make the distinction, which is hard to do on Twitter, between the leadership and then those lifetime intelligence, the agents, the officers, and the analysts who we will rely upon. But he needs to get to the bottom of this. My concern is the more Donald Trump disparages the intelligence community, he puts himself at odds with Republican leaders on Capitol Hill. That jeopardizes maybe the confirmation process of some of his nominees and also the all-important agenda from the Republicans.
And here's what Sean Spicer says to expect from Donald Trump as he sits down in that meeting with these top intelligence officials. He says he is prepared to listen and understand how they got to their conclusions, which he has been questioning.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you follow the tweets, I hate to say it, I have to agree with Juan here. I mean, I think Donald Trump is the one who is conflating these ideas that if the Russians are behind it, that means the Democrats are trying to delegitimize his election. I mean, I think if you listen carefully to the words that Clapper used when he was out there, he said, no, they didn't interfere with the voting boxes, and we aren't the ones that are in a position to say if this impacted the election. What he's saying is that the intelligence officials aren't the ones that would ever go out and try and quantify what impact this information had on the election. It was certainly one of the factors. I mean, as you saw these emails trickle out every day, it was something that influenced the way that people were thinking, and it's one of a zillion things. It didn't necessarily turn the election, but there were, I mean, if you take yourself back to that point in time, there was a lot of information coming out, and the nonstop WikiLeaks did have an impact on people's thinking.
Well, so you said that Clapper said that they had no way to
quantify it.
Yeah, to quantify it.
Measure it.
And it is true to say that they shouldn't politicize
Right.
it. I think we can say that. I don't know that we can necessarily go further than that until we know everything that they're learning in that meeting. We have every hope because these people have taken the oath to, abide by the Constitution. They're patriots in our country, these people collecting intelligence for the betterment of our national security. But, we had the same hope with the FBI staying politically clean, too, through James Comey.
That's true.
And we saw him do some interesting political gymnastics over the summer, for lack of a better word. But I will say this, as we move forward, Donald Trump has a small window to kind of narrow down what he's going to say about this and how to move forward. He does start to look at that process of his nominations being looked at next week. They're already prepping for the process to begin with those top national security picks just next week. So the window is narrow for him to figure out, okay, where do I fall here? How do I separate this? It's like the shaft from the wheat. The idea that we were hacked, because that's big. It doesn't matter who hacked us, and whether it was the Russians and relationships with them, so on and so forth.
Here's some thinking. Just listening to John McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday, Senate Intel, what they were clear was, we have a lot of respect for the intelligence community, and we think, politics apart, that they are doing their job, and we don't understand why the president-elect would try to undercut these intelligence officials. And a key point here is, and I must say, I'm kind of alarmed by it, that people who previously would say Julian Assange,
right,
are suddenly, we love Julian Assange.
The hearings with it yesterday.
Right.
I mean, you've heard everybody from Senator Graham to Senator McCain. You've heard people say not to legitimize. I mean,
but they're not going to threaten his confirmations. I think that's not the issue. I think these people want Donald Trump to succeed, are going to try to support him, not the Democrats, but the Republicans. The issue here is the intelligence community feeling like, gee, this man really doesn't trust us. Wall Street Journal report this week, he's trying to reorganize or
which
decrease,
they denied,
and then
100%.
They subsequently have to come out and deny. It's just like a back and forth between the president-elect and the intel community.
Just really quickly, the fact it helps Donald Trump, the fact that he has nominated former Senator Dan Coats to take James Clapper's place. He's a hawk on Russia. He wanted tougher penalties on Ukraine from the Obama administration.
Yeah.
That
certainly sends a message. All right, we've got more. Meantime, the FBI now denies